They called it a hard lesson. At 15, I spent 3 months sleeping in the back of our family sedan during a Minnesota winter. Frost on the inside of the windows. Engine dead by midnight. They said it would teach me consequences. 11 years later, I walked into the county assessor's office with a real estate portfolio worth $3 million and bought the entire block where that car used to sit, including the house with the bedroom I wasn't allowed to use. This isn't a revenge story. It's a mathematics story. They just didn't know I was calculating the whole time. I'm a real estate developer now, 26 years old, 17 properties across 3 counties. But the one that matters is Ridgemont Avenue, the street I grew up on, where my parents still live. When I signed that purchase agreement, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the night the temperature dropped to 20 below and the car battery died at 3 in the morning. That night taught me something no school ever could. But to understand why I bought that street, you have to understand what happened the first winter I spent in that car. The first time I slept in that car, I was 15 years old, and the temperature was 17 degrees below zero. A 1998 Buick LeSabre, navy blue, cloth seats that held the cold like a freezer. My father walked out at 11 p.m., locked the doors from the outside, and said through the window, "You'll think twice before forgetting your chores again." I forgot to take out the trash. That was the offense. 3 bags of kitchen waste that sat on the curb an extra 6 hours because I got home late from a school project. He could have grounded me, taken my phone. Instead, he decided I needed to understand what real consequences felt like. My mother watched from the kitchen window. I saw the curtain move. She didn't come outside. She never did. That first night, I cried for about an hour. Then I stopped because crying made it colder. Tears froze on my cheeks. I learned to pull my knees to my chest under a pile of beach towels my grandmother had given me years earlier. Grandma Eddie. She was the only one who ever asked if I was okay. But she lived 3 states away, and I didn't have a phone to call her. The car became my bedroom for the next 3.5 months. Not every night. That would have been too obvious. Just the nights when my father decided I needed another lesson. Maybe 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. The pattern was unpredictable, which was the point. I never knew which evening would end with the click of the deadbolt and the hum of the garage door closing behind him. By week 2, I had learned how to start the engine without the keys. A trick my friend Marcus showed me after I confessed where I'd been sleeping. You can jump the ignition wires under the dash if you know which ones to cross. I ran the engine for 10 minutes at a time, just enough to get the heater blowing warm air, then shut it off to save gas. My father never checked the fuel gauge. He didn't notice the quarter tank disappearing every week. That was my first real estate lesson, actually. Not from a book, from survival. I learned to track resources: gas, food, warmth. I learned that the people who control the property control the people inside it. I learned that my bedroom, the one with the pink wallpaper and the window that faced the oak tree, wasn't mine at all. It was a permission slip that could be revoked at any moment. I started paying attention to houses differently after that. Walking home from school, I'd count the FOR sale signs. I'd memorize the prices. I'd wonder who decided what a home was worth. At 16, I got a job at a diner called Hank's, 6 blocks from the high school. Minimum wage plus tips. I saved every dollar. Not for a car, I already had access to one. Not for college, for a down payment. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew I wanted to own something. Something no one could take away. The turning point came in February, a Tuesday night, 22 below. I was in the Buick, shivering under those beach towels, when I saw a woman walking her dog on the other side of the street. She was wearing a thick parka. The dog had a little coat. I remember feeling jealous of the dog. That's when something in me snapped. Not the dramatic kind of snap you see in movies. A quieter shift. I realized that if I spent my life being angry about that car, I would always be the girl in the Buick. The only way out was to become someone who owned the Buick, and then someone who owned the street, and then someone who owned the whole neighborhood. That night, I made a decision. I would learn everything about real estate, every loophole, every strategy, every way to turn $100 into $10,000. I would become so financially untouchable that no one would ever be able to lock me out of anything again. I started with the library. After school, I'd walk to the Ridgemont Public Library and read books on real estate investing. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The millionaire real estate investor. I took notes in a spiral notebook that I hid inside my jacket. At Hanks, I listened to the contractors who came in for coffee. I asked questions. How do you qualify for a loan? What's a cap rate? How do you find motivated sellers? Most of them thought I was just a curious kid. One of them, a guy named Sal who flipped houses on the south side, gave me his card. "Call me when you're 18, he said. "I'll teach you the business." I taped that card to the inside cover of my notebook. I looked at it every night in the Buick. Spring came. The car sleeping stopped, not because my father had a change of heart, but because the weather warmed up enough that the lesson lost its teeth. He found other punishments. Grounding, extra chores. But I'd already learned what I needed. The Buick had taught me something my parents never intended. That security is a thing you build, not a thing you're given. By 17, I had saved $3,000. Not much, but it was mine. I opened a bank account that my parents didn't know about. I deposited cash in small amounts to avoid suspicion. I studied property listings like other kids studied for the SATs. I learned that the house 3 doors down from ours, the one with the peeling paint and the overgrown yard, had been in foreclosure for 6 months. The bank owned it. I called the number on the county records. I asked about buying it. The woman on the phone laughed. "Honey, you need $250,000 for that." I hung up. I wrote down the number, 250,000. I stared at it for a long time. Then I started calculating. If I saved $15,000 a year for 17 years, I could buy it in cash. But I didn't have 17 years. I needed a faster path. That's when I discovered wholesaling. A strategy where you find a motivated seller, get the property under contract at a discount, and assign the contract to another buyer for a fee. No money down, no loans, just a phone and a notebook. I found my first deal 3 weeks later. A widow on Maple Street who needed to sell her late husband's house fast to pay medical bills. I offered $50,000 below market value. She accepted. I found a buyer in 2 days. My fee, $5,000. $5,000 in 1 week, more than I'd made in 6 months at Hanks. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was in the Buick, but because I was too wired. I had found the lever, and I was going to keep pulling it until the whole machine belonged to me. By the time I turned 18, I had done 7 wholesale deals, $21,000 in my hidden account, enough for a down payment on a small duplex on the edge of town, my first actual property. I bought it in the name of an LLC I registered at the county clerk's office. My parents had no idea. I was still living in their house, still pretending to be the obedient daughter. But every night I went to sleep knowing that somewhere in this city, there was a roof that belonged to me. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. My father had recently refinanced the house on Ridgemont Avenue. I saw the paperwork on the kitchen counter. He'd taken out a second mortgage to cover some business debt. Adjustable rate. The interest rate was set to reset in 18 months. I made a note. I started watching the house. That's where Act 1 ends. Because what happened next was not about revenge. It was about math. And my father was about to fail a calculation he didn't even know he was taking. 18 months. That's how long I had until my father's adjustable rate mortgage reset. I knew because I found the paperwork in his home office one afternoon when I was looking for a stapler. The original loan was for $210,000. The teaser rate was 3.9%. In 18 months, it would adjust to prime plus 4. That meant the payment would jump by roughly $1,200 a month. My father's building supply business was already losing money. He had taken out this second mortgage to keep it afloat. He was betting that business would turn around before the rate reset. I put the paperwork back exactly where I found it. I didn't say a word, but I started planning. The duplex I bought on the edge of town closed in August 3 weeks after I turned 18. 2 units, each renting for $750 a month. My mortgage payment was $900. That left me with $600 of positive cash flow. I moved into the smaller unit myself, told my parents I wanted to be closer to school. They didn't argue. My mother just said, "You'll be back." She said it like a prediction, not an invitation. I wasn't going back. The first year, I did 9 more wholesale deals, $15,000 in assignment fees. I bought a second property using the duplex as collateral for a home equity line of credit. A 3-bedroom ranch in the South End that needed new plumbing and a roof. I got it for $62,000. Spent $18,000 on repairs. Sold it 8 months later for $123,000. That was my first real flip. 2 months after that, I bought a 4-unit apartment building with an FHA loan that only required 3.5% down. The seller was motivated. His wife had died, and he wanted out. I paid $195,000. The units needed paint and carpet. I did the work myself at night with a headlamp and a paint roller. By the time I turned 20, I owned 7 doors. 2 duplexes, the 4-unit, and a single-family rental I bought at a tax auction. My net worth was roughly $350,000. I was still driving a used Honda Civic with a dented bumper. I didn't care. Every dollar went back into the portfolio. But I wasn't just building wealth. I was watching Ridgemont Avenue. The street where I grew up had 16 houses. My parents' house was number 214, a 3-bedroom colonial built in 1978. The yard my father never mowed on time. The driveway where the Buick used to sit. I had memorized every property on that street. I knew which ones were rentals, which were owner-occupied, which had been in the same family for decades. I knew that number 208 had been in foreclosure twice. That number 222 was owned by an elderly couple whose children lived out of state. That number 210 was a rental whose landlord was tired of managing it. I started making calls, not as myself, as a representative of Ridgemont Capital LLC, a company I had registered in Delaware. I offered to buy number 210 for cash. The landlord accepted. $68,000. I closed in 30 days. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my sister, not even Sal, the contractor who had given me his card years earlier. I wanted the street, and I wanted to do it silently. The next property was number 208. The bank still owned it from the foreclosure. I submitted a cash offer through a broker I'd never met in person. $42,000. The bank countered at $50,000. I accepted. Now I owned 3 houses on Ridgemont Avenue. My parents had no idea. The countdown clock on their mortgage was now at 11 months. I found out my father's business was in worse shape than I thought. Not from him, from a public records search. A creditor had filed a mechanic's lien against his company for unpaid materials. $37,000. He'd stopped paying the supplier. The supplier was now suing him. The court date was in 4 months. I remember staring at the computer screen in my apartment. The lien was public. Anyone could see it, including the bank that held my parents' mortgage. If the bank discovered the lien, they could accelerate the loan or refuse to modify it when the rate reset. My father was walking into a trap, and he didn't even know the walls were moving. I could have warned him. Part of me wanted to, but I remembered February in the Buick, the beach towels, the frost on the inside of the windshield. I closed the laptop and went for a run instead. 3 months later, I bought number 222 from the elderly couple. They were moving to Florida to be near their daughter. I paid market value, $115,000. They never asked who I was. The closing agent handled everything through my LLC. I now owned 4 houses on Ridgemont Avenue. My parents' house at 214 was the only one I didn't control, but I knew their mortgage reset was now 8 months away. Then I found out something that changed everything. I was at the county recorder's office pulling title reports for another deal when I decided to check my parents' property. I don't know why, curiosity, habit. I pulled up the deed for 214 Ridgemont Avenue. What I saw made me stop cold. My father had taken out a 3rd mortgage, a private money loan at 12% interest. The lender was listed as someone named David Kohler. I didn't recognize the name, but the loan amount was $80,000. And it had been recorded just 2 weeks earlier. My father had borrowed $80,000 at 12% interest from a private lender. That meant he was desperate. Banks wouldn't lend to him anymore. He was paying a loan shark rate to keep the house, and if he missed even one payment, Kohler could foreclose. I pulled David Kohler's name through the court records. He was a known private lender with a history of predatory loans. He'd been sued twice for usurious interest rates. He settled both cases. He was exactly the kind of lender you go to when you have no other options. I sat in the parking lot of the recorder's office for 20 minutes. The math was simple. My father was drowning. The arm reset was coming. The private loan was bleeding him dry, and I owned 5 of the 16 houses on the street. I could buy the whole block. I just needed a plan. That plan started with a conversation I didn't want to have. I called my sister, Kelsey. She was 23 now, living in the city, working at a marketing firm. We hadn't talked much since I moved out, but she still talked to our parents. She knew things I didn't. "Iris," her voice was surprised. "It's been months. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need to ask you something about Dad." A long pause. "What about him?" "Have they talked about the house? About money?" Kelsey's voice dropped. "Mom called me last week. She was crying. Dad hasn't told her everything, but she knows they're in trouble. She said something about the mortgage adjusting. She asked me if I could help." "Can you?" "I'm drowning in student loans, Iris. I can't even help myself." I closed my eyes. "Okay, thanks, Kels." "Iris, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." I hung up. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I just needed to decide how to do it. The next morning, I walked into the office of a real estate attorney I had used before, a woman named Patricia Chen. She specialized in complex acquisitions. I told her I wanted to buy an entire residential block, 16 properties, one seller on each. I wanted to make offers simultaneously through separate LLCs so no one would know it was the same buyer. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. "That's a lot of moving parts. You have the capital." "I have access to financing, and I have cash reserves." "Which properties are you targeting?" I slid a map across her desk. Ridgemont Avenue highlighted in yellow. All of them. She studied the map, then she looked at me. "You know your parents live on this block." "I know." "Is this personal?" "It's business." She nodded slowly. "I'll need a list of the properties, the current owners, and their recorded mortgages. Then we structure the offers. You want to close them all within 30 days of each other." 60 days is fine. I want them all recorded on the same day if possible." "That's unusual, very conspicuous." "Use different title companies, different closing agents. I don't want anyone connecting the dots until the deeds are recorded." Patricia made notes. "You understand that once these are recorded, the public record will show one person owning every house on that street. Your name." "I know." "And you're prepared for the fallout." "I've been preparing for it since I was 15 years old." She closed the folder. "I'll have a proposal on your desk by Friday." Over the next 3 months, I bought the rest of Ridgemont Avenue, properties 202 through 224. I used 4 different LLCs, 8 different closing agents, 3 different lenders. I paid cash where I could, financing where I couldn't. The total acquisition cost was just over $2.1 million. I had accumulated about $400,000 in equity and cash. I borrowed the rest through portfolio loans against my existing properties. By the time the dust settled, I owned every house on the block except one, number 214, my parents' house. That one I couldn't buy, because my father wasn't selling. But I knew he would have to, soon. The ARM reset was 2 months away. The private loan was costing him $900 a month in interest alone. His business had lost its biggest contract. The mechanic's lien had turned into a judgment. He was being garnished. I could have waited. I could have let the bank foreclose and bought it at auction. But that would have taken another 6 to 9 months, and I wanted it on my terms. So I made a different move. I sent a letter, not from me, from a company I'd created called Ridgemont Holdings LLC. The letter was addressed to my father. It said, "We are interested in acquiring your property at 214 Ridgemont Avenue for our ongoing neighborhood development project. We are prepared to offer you $250,000, well above current market value, in a cash transaction with a 30-day close. No contingencies, no inspections. We will cover all closing costs. This offer is valid for 14 days. $250,000. His house was worth maybe $210,000 on a good day. It was more than he owed. It would clear the private loan, pay off the judgment, and leave him with about $40,000. Not a fortune, but a lifeline. I waited. 6 days later, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Iris, it was my mother's voice. She sounded different, smaller. Mom. Iris, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My stomach tightened. Okay. Did you send this letter, this Ridgemont Holdings thing? The question hung in the air. I could have lied. I could have said no, watched the drama play out from a distance. But the whole point of this was that I wanted them to know. I wanted them to understand. Yes, I said. I sent it. Silence, then a sound I'd never heard from my mother. Not crying, something worse. A quiet, broken exhale. You bought the whole street, she whispered. All those houses, it was you. Yes. That was you at the closings, every single one. Yes. How long have you been planning this? I took a breath. Since the first night I slept in that Buick. The line went dead. I sat in my office, staring at the phone. I had just detonated a bomb. The shrapnel was still falling, but I wasn't finished, because the offer was still valid. They had 8 days left to accept. And if they didn't, I knew exactly what would happen next. The next morning, my father showed up at my office at 7:45 a.m. He had not called first. He walked past the receptionist, past the conference room, and stopped in my doorway holding a crumpled piece of paper. The letter from Ridgemont Holdings, LLC. The offer I had sent. I want to see the principal, he said. The person who signed this letter. That's me. He stared at me like I had grown a second head. You can't do this. You can't just buy up a whole street like some kind of developer. I am a developer, and I already did. Those are people's homes, Iris. Families live there. You mean like the family who locked their daughter in a car at 17 below zero? The words landed like a slap. His face went white, then red. He threw the letter onto my desk. You think this is clever. You think you're teaching me a lesson. You don't know what it's like to carry a business, a mortgage, the weight of a family. You're 26 years old. I know exactly what it's like. I've been carrying myself since I was 15. The difference is I didn't drown. You think I wanted to put you in that car. I was trying to teach you discipline, responsibility. Discipline, I said the word slowly. You call 3 months of hypothermia discipline. I call it child abuse. Don't you dare. Dad, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network documents that forced sleep deprivation and exposure to cold are forms of maltreatment. The CDC says 1 in 7 children experience abuse or neglect. I was one of them, under your roof. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, not remorse, confusion, like he had never considered that what he did had a name. He picked up the letter. This offer, is it real? $250 cash, 30-day close, no contingencies, you have 5 days left. And if I don't accept? Then your arm resets in 47 days. Your private loan from David Kohler has a balloon payment due in 90 days. And the judgment against your business is accruing interest at 9%. You do the math. How do you know about Kohler? I pulled your title. It's public record. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The daughter he remembered was the one who never talked back, who folded laundry without being asked, who slept in the Buick without complaining. That girl was gone. I had been gone for a long time. He turned and walked out without another word. I heard the front door slam. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. I hadn't cried since that first night in the car. 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice was different this time, softer, careful. Iris, can we meet? Just the two of us. We met at a diner on the south side, neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She looked older, smaller, the same woman who watched from the kitchen window all those years ago. She didn't start with small talk. Your father told me about the offer. I figured. Is it true you own the whole street? 15 of the 16 houses. Yes. She nodded slowly. I looked up your company, Ridgemont Capital. You have a portfolio of 24 properties, almost $4 million in assets. She paused. I didn't know. I had no idea. Nobody did. You really built all that from nothing. Not from nothing. From a notebook and a library card and a job at Hank's Diner. She stared at the table. I know what he did was wrong, Iris. I knew it then. I should have stopped him. But you didn't. No, I didn't. She looked up. I was afraid of him, afraid of losing the house, afraid of what people would think, so I stayed silent, and I let it happen. I felt something crack inside me, not anger, recognition. She was a victim too, in her own way, but that didn't absolve her. She was the adult. She was supposed to protect me. I'm not here to punish you, Mom. I'm here to buy the house. Is that what this is? Punishment? It's business. Your house is a liability I want to turn into an asset. That's all. Is that really all? I didn't answer. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Your father said no. He refuses to sell to you, but I'm asking you to reconsider. Not for him, for me, for Kelsey. We don't have anywhere else to go. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a photograph. Me at 7 years old, sitting on the front steps of 214 Ridgemont Avenue, holding a birthday cake. I remembered that day. My mother had made the cake from scratch. My father had bought me a bicycle. It was before everything went wrong, before the business failed, before the Buick. I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I slid it back. The offer stands for 2 more days. After that, I'm moving on. I stood up. She didn't follow. That night, Kelsey called me. She was crying. Iris, what are you doing? Mom called me. She's a mess. Dad is drinking. This is destroying them. Kelsey, do you know what they did to me? I know, she told me the car, all of it. Her voice cracked. I didn't know, I swear I didn't know. I believe you. Then why are you doing this? Can't you just let it go? I closed my eyes. Let it go, let it go. For 10 years, I let it go. I built everything I have by not looking back. But the house is a symbol, Kels, of everything they took from me, of what I had to become to survive. It's just a house. No, it's the place where I learned that love is conditional, that safety is a privilege, that the people who are supposed to protect you can be the ones who hurt you most. Silence. Iris, I love you, but I'm scared. For them, for us. Kels, I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm trying to own my own story. Then tell me, what happens after you own the house? What then? I didn't have an answer. The offer deadline came and went. My father didn't call. I withdrew the offer. I started preparing for Plan B. But 2 days later, something unexpected happened. David Kohler, the private lender, filed a notice of default on my parents' house. My father had missed the last 2 payments. The clock on foreclosure had started ticking. My mother called me, hysterical. Iris, please, he didn't tell me. He stopped paying. They're going to take the house. I could have let it happen. Let the bank take it. Buy it at auction for pennies on the dollar. That would have been the smart financial play, the ruthless play. But I wasn't ruthless. I was something else. Someone who remembered what it felt like to be locked out in the cold. I called my attorney, Patricia Chen. Can I buy the note, become the lender instead of Kohler? She paused. Interesting approach. If you buy the debt, you control the foreclosure. You can either accelerate it or offer a modification. How much does he owe? Principal plus accrued interest, about $82,000. Contact Kohler, offer to buy the note at par. Tell him I'll pay his legal fees too. He'll want a premium. I'll pay up to $90,000. 3 days later, I owned my parents' mortgage. The note was in the name of another LLC, one they didn't know about. But I held the paper. I could call the loan due tomorrow or let them live there rent-free for the next 10 years. The choice was mine. I sat in my apartment, holding the assignment of mortgage document. $87,000, a small price for the power to decide my parents' future. I called my mother. I bought the note. Kohler is out. What does that mean? It means I own your mortgage now. Not a bank, not a lender, me. Silence. Mom, I'm not going to foreclose, but I'm also not going to pretend that everything is fine. I want you to come to my office next week. Alone. We're going to talk about what happened, and then we're going to figure out what comes next. She started crying. Okay, okay. The next morning, I drove to Ridgemont Avenue. I parked across the street from 214. The house looked exactly the same. The same green shutters, the same cracked driveway, the same oak tree I used to climb when I was a kid. I got out of the car, walked up to the front door, knocked. My father opened it. He looked older, defeated. He didn't say anything, just stepped aside. I walked into the living room. The same couch, the same carpet, the same kitchen table where my mother had told me the cabin sale was what responsible families do. I sat down. We need to talk, I said. He sat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I'm sorry. 2 words, that's all, but they changed everything. I didn't say anything for a long time. I'm sorry wasn't enough. It couldn't undo 3 months in a frozen car. It couldn't bring back the years I spent saving every dollar because I learned that nobody else would save me. But it was the first time he had ever said it. The first time he acknowledged that what he did had a name. Thank you, I said quietly. I needed to hear that. He nodded. He didn't try to explain or justify. He just sat there, a man who had spent 26 years being the authority, finally realizing he had been wrong. I'm not going to take the house, I said. I bought the note to stop Kohler from foreclosing. You can stay here as long as you need. We'll restructure the payments to something you can afford. 0 interest. He stared at me. Why? Because I'm not him. I'm not the person who uses power to hurt people. I could have let you lose everything. I had the leverage, but that would have made me just like you. He flinched, but he didn't argue. But there are conditions, I continued. I want you to see a therapist, both of you. I want you to tell Kelsey the truth about what happened, and I want you to sell the building supply business. It's bleeding you dry and you know it. The business is all I have. The business is a weight around your neck. You're not a builder anymore. You're a man trying to hold on to something that's already gone. He sat back. His hands were shaking. I don't know who I am without it. That's what the therapy is for. We sat in silence for a minute. Then he said, okay. That was the first crack in the wall. It took 2 more months of difficult conversations, of silence, of my mother crying on the phone, of Kelsey playing mediator. But eventually, the walls came down. My father sold the business. He took a job managing a hardware store across town, less money, but he came home at 6 instead of 9. He stopped drinking. He started going to counseling. I didn't attend sessions with him. That would have been too much, too fast, but I got reports. He was talking. He was listening. He was finally, at 61, learning to be a different kind of person. My mother went back to the pharmacy. She and I started having lunch once a month. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about her garden, about Kelsey's promotion, about the weather. Small things, safe things, but they were real. They were a beginning. The street is different now. I own 15 of the 16 houses. I renovated most of them, updated kitchens, new roofs, landscaping. I raised the rents, but I kept them below market rate. I didn't want to price out the people who had lived there for years. The elderly couple at 222 came back from Florida and rented their old house from me. They said it felt like coming home. The one house I didn't own was 214, my parents' house. I structured a lease-to-own agreement with them. They pay me rent at a rate they can afford. In 10 years, the house will be theirs free and clear. No mortgage, no interest, no bank. Some people told me that was too generous, that I should have let them suffer the consequences. But here's what they don't understand. I didn't buy the street to punish my parents. I bought it to prove that I could. To prove that the girl in the Buick could become something they never imagined. And once I proved it, I didn't need to keep proving it anymore. The surprising detail came 6 months later. I was going through old files at my office, preparing for a new development project, when I found a document I had forgotten. The original purchase agreement for the first property I bought on Ridgemont Avenue. The landlord at 210, the one I bought from so quietly. His name was Robert Kohler. Robert Kohler, David Kohler's younger brother. I sat back in my chair. I had bought my first property on that street from the brother of the man who would later lend my father money. Two separate transactions, two separate chains of events, but somehow connected. I pulled up the public records for David Kohler's loan to my father. The loan was made 8 months after I bought number 210 from Robert. That meant my father must have gone to David Kohler for money after seeing that properties on his own street were being bought up. He was trying to hold on to his house, and he went to a lender whose brother had already sold to me. He never knew, neither did I, it was a coincidence, but it felt like something else. Like the street was always going to end up in my hands. That summer, I held a block party on Ridgemont Avenue. I rented a tent, hired a caterer, sent invitations to every house on the street. My parents came. Kelsey came. The elderly couple from 222 came. The new renters at 208, a young family with 2 kids, brought a cooler full of lemonade. I stood on the porch of 210, looking down the street at the house where I grew up. The house where I learned that safety is not guaranteed, that love can be conditional, that the people who are supposed to protect you can be the ones who hurt you most. But also the house where I learned that you can survive, that you can build something new, that you can take the worst moments of your life and turn them into fuel. I looked at my father, standing in my mother's garden, talking to a neighbor. He caught my eye and nodded, just a nod, but it was enough. The street is mine, but more than that, the story is mine, and I get to decide how it ends. That was a year ago. Last month, I closed on my 28th property, a commercial building downtown. I'm working on a deal to buy the entire block where Hank's Diner used to be. Hank's closed 5 years ago. The building is vacant. I plan to turn it into a community center with a scholarship fund for kids who grew up in difficult homes. I haven't told my parents that part yet, but I think they'll understand. Because the real payoff was never the street. It was becoming someone my grandmother would have been proud of. Someone who could break the cycle instead of passing it down. Someone who could turn a frozen winter into a foundation. People ask me all the time if I forgave them. I tell them forgiveness is a word that means different things to different people. I don't think about it in terms of forgiving or not forgiving. I think about it in terms of what I built. The Buick taught me that survival isn't about waiting for someone to save you. It's about learning the math of your own life so thoroughly that no one can take the answer away from you. There's a question that stays with me, and I want to leave it with you. What would you do if you had the power to rewrite the story of the place that hurt you? Would you burn it down, or would you build something on top of it that made the pain mean something? Because that choice is real. It's not hypothetical. Every day, people make it inside their own lives. Some of them are sitting in cars right now, trying to stay warm, wondering if there's a way out. I want you to know there is. It doesn't look like revenge. It looks like a balance sheet that grows every year. It looks like a skill you learned at the bottom that becomes your ladder. The street is mine now. The story is mine. But the best part isn't the deeds or the rent checks. It's knowing that the girl who froze in that back seat became someone who decides who gets to stay warm. That's a power I never asked for, but I earned it, and I use it carefully. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that the worst chapter doesn't write the whole book. Drop a comment telling me what you would protect if you could protect one thing. I read every one. And if you want to follow along for the next story, hit subscribe. The bell icon. You don't want to miss where this goes next. Because the cycle doesn't have to repeat. It can end with you. It ended with me, and it can end with you too.